Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the most popular specialization in World of Warcraft, the Retribution Paladin. This is a specialization that got reworked in Dragonflight with a focus on simplicity and output, and since then has been a very dominant specialization, and it's getting even further simplified in the next expansion, Midnight. So by the end of this video, you're going to have a good idea of how good is Ret Paladin looking, the direction for it. Is it going to be the right fit for you as far as complexity and gameplay? Because making that decision is very important. If you pick a spec that's too easy for you, you're going to get bored pretty quickly. If you pick a spec that doesn't look like it has a future, you're going to have a hard time getting invited to groups. So that is the purpose of these breakdown videos on my channel. And as always, if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. So the first thing before we get onto the training dummy, we start talking about rotation and mechanics. I want to talk about the consolidation of spells and abilities. So as far as defense goes, they've basically consolidated Divine Protection and Shield of Vengeance into the same ability. You'll see on the Paladin talent tree that Shield of Vengeance is passive, and it is just tied directly into Divine Protection. So when you use Divine Protection as so, you will also get Shield of Vengeance. So they've turned your defensive cooldown basically into like a Swifty one-shot defensive macro, using them both at the same time. So if in the past you wanted to separate them and use them in different scenarios, maybe Divine Protection because you were stunned and then Shield of Vengeance later, you're not going to be able to make that choice anymore. They're just going to automatically cast at the same time. However, the advantages of this is that you can Shield of Vengeance when you are stunned now, which you couldn't have previously. So it really depends on the threshold of damage as to whether or not this ends up being a good change or a bad change in terms of your defensive effectiveness. You still have Divine Shield, you still have Blessing Protection, you still have a lot of tools, Lay on Hands for these types of like emergency recovery. That I don't think this is like the end of the world, but it is going to bring your keybind density down. You're not going to need that additional keybind for it, but you're going to want to know that this is existing because it's going to be a really powerful effect with both of them chained together. The next one is that Final Verdict is being fused into Execution Sentence, basically. So it's going to fire off the same types of animations, and they're just kind of brought together, right? They're just fused together. I think this is a cool way of keeping the cool mechanics of Final Reckoning and the cool mechanics of Execution Sentence at the same time, because just completely dropping one for the other, I think you do miss out on something. So I think that this is a very cool change. So you can see that with the Execution Sentence, when we cast it on the mob, it does Final Reckoning and it puts Execution Sentence on the target. So you're getting a double whammy with that. You're going to be getting a lot of power hitting through from that with the explosion of it, and you get the cool double mechanic of having both of those abilities at the same time. So you do get a lot of value there, and I think previously you would go one or the other, or maybe not be able to get one of them entirely at all. So I think that this is a good direction overall to go with Execution Sentence and Final Reckoning. I think it's a really good go-to. Now, Crusader Strikes is no longer generating holy power, basically. Templar Strikes is back, which means that you're not passively generating holy power. You have to press buttons in order to generate holy power. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world for you guys. Like, I don't think that's going to, send your DPS off a cliff or a ravine in order to have to actually manage your rotation a little bit more effectively. So they have taken some passiveness out in that regard, but your active management is now going to be rewarding you. And also what you can't see on the talent tree is that they've basically buffed the back end of Final Verdict and Divine Storm. So finishers are doing a lot more damage. They want to put emphasis on the finishers as like a core part of the rotation, as opposed to kind of just bleeding all of the abilities together. So your finishers are likely going to be actually finishing their targets. Another one is that Hammer of Wrath is no longer a keybind. It's basically going to be fused in with Judgment, and it's going to be transforming in the situations where you're going to be able to use it. So we've lost the Shield of Vengeance keybind, we lost the Final Reckoning keybind, we've lost the Hammer of Wrath keybind because it's getting fused in together rotationally with Judgment. So we're already down like 3 or so keybinds in this position. So nice little shave off. Again, some specs, I don't know if they really needed this much. But I guess we'll see. If you're new to Ret or you've played Ret, let me know in the comments down below if this sounds enticing to you or if it sounds like it's too much spell removal or not for your class. I think the trade-off of adding Templar Strike into the game and putting more emphasis onto your finishers and your rotation is likely going to make things a little bit more interesting there, at least mechanically, while also reducing the overall kind of ability bloat for your class. Now, in the hero talent tree for Templar, they've basically moved Divine Hammer out of the Paladin tree. And they've also baked it into Divine Toll. So Templar is just all about hammers. So they're like, all right, we'll just take that hammer out. So that way Divine Hammer is not taking up too much, Divine Hammers are not taking up too much keybind density from the Paladin tree. So they stripped all that away. Another one is that you can no longer take Repentance. Repentance has been on a very weird journey. It went from having a cooldown to having no cooldown and spammable to just deleted from the game entirely. I personally liked Repentance just because I felt like that was like a skill-oriented crowd control. I can see in PvE and Mythic Plus, people only care about having Blinding Light because it's an AoE stun that stops casts, and that's the most important thing to have. A casted single target CC is just not something in Mythic Plus anymore. It's just all about AoE damage and AoE stops. So I can see why they would be able to remove it there. Also, maybe it was too oppressive, given that they are doing like a mass disarmament of crowd control across the board. So maybe this is just a necessary evil. I feel like we'll have to wait and see it play out with this, because at least in PvP situations, I think having lost Repentance means that you're going to have probably a lot more difficulty with some classes, particularly healers, right, that have a lot of throughput that require crowd control in order to deal with that throughput. But maybe depending on the tuning, that won't end up being an issue. But it was also kind of cool to fake cast interrupts and kind of get your little outplays like that. You're not going to be able to do that. Also, if you try and take Searing Glare, it's going to replace Blinding Light. So before, whereas you would have had them completely separate keybinds, right, one for Glare, one for Rep, or one for Blind, now it's just one bind. You basically remove two abilities if you go in for Searing Glare. But Searing Glare I find a lot more annoying as far as mechanics are concerned. So Ret Paladin is just simplification, consolidation, focusing in on its finishers, and adding more input and value on your overall rotation in terms of feeling strong and powerful. So let's just attack this training dummy for a little bit and kind of go over what exactly is going on. So we still have Avenging Wrath, and we can use our Execution Sentence. We still have Wake of Ashes. We're playing not the Templar version of Ret Paladin, so we're connecting laser beams to our targets. And you can see that our Hammer of Wrath on our Judgment Bind transformed when we used Avenging Wrath. And the Templar Strike is kind of cool when it lights up and it transforms as well. You'll see like your action bar giving you these nice little dopamine hits whenever they light up, and you get these big transforms, and your Blade of Justice lights up. I don't feel too overwhelmed, at least from like a keybind standpoint. Like, when Enhancement Shaman last expansion, you just had like every single thing on your action bar was lit up at the same time, and you were just like, what is going on, bro? This is too much. There's too much going on. This doesn't feel as overwhelming. I think it's a nice like kind of like middle point where I'm just kind of smacking this guy every once in a while. I'm getting that dopamine hit like right there with my Templar Strike empowerment. I got the Blade of Justice empowerment as well. Seems to be quite a heavy emphasis on Blade of Justice, though, in this expansion. So do take note of that. A lot of the talents focus around Expurgation. A lot of the talents are focusing on buffing the damage of those abilities. But it's not too complicated. It's still kind of just like bonky bonk where you're going through here. Because, again, it's important that if you're picking a class, it's not going to be too boring for you or too overwhelming, right? Like if you don't have a lot of time to play the game, you're only logging on for a few hours a week or whatever, and you just want to kind of feel good. You don't want to get stomped out because you don't have a lot of time to practice. Ret Paladin will be, I think, fit in as like a nice or entry level, maybe bordering moderate level of difficulty now that you don't have any kind of passive holy power generation that can help you out there. Because you can see like the only holy power I'm getting is whenever I'm using an active ability. And you can kind of mess up the rotation a little bit, but I don't think at the end of the day it's going to be too bad. Like we're sustaining over 6 million DPS or something like that. They talked about a stat squish, but like I'm max level and I have 500,000 HP I kind of wish that they had brought the numbers down a little bit lower than they have, because I feel like we're just going to be exactly where we started by the end of the expansion or something ridiculous like that. But I am a fan of the execution sentence combination with Final Reckoning. That feels really cool. It's also nice not having to put it on the ground. Now it just kind of connects automatically for you, hits the target. I think it's a nice balance where I'm not feeling too overwhelmed. I guess right now with During Avenging Wrath, there's a lot of buttons that are all lighting up at the same time, which could feel a little bit overwhelming. But I really like Templar Strikes. I really like this ability. I like that it's a combo and it can enhance itself. Encourages me to kind of get in melee range, which is also something that's important to take into account, that they're buffing auto attack damage significantly. Whereas Ret Paladin was kind of like this mid-ranged class since its rework in Dragonflight. Now you're going to need to be in melee range, which could feel as a significant loss. So these are things that you need to prepare yourself for, things you need to adjust for, at least right now. Everything is subject to change. It likely will change. And as always, if you want to make sure you stay up to date with those changes, then smash the subscribe button, because I will be relaying them here into the channel basically as they happen to the best of my ability. But that's basically it for Ret Paladin. I think it feels good. I've played Ret Paladin as an alt throughout multiple expansions. It's kind of just like a dirty little secret, dirty fun. I'd never really kind of dedicate a lot of time to main it though, because I like more advanced classes. But I think as a beginner or to like a moderate level player, that you'll likely be able to pull quite a lot of value out of this. And it's fun. I think this is fun. I think it's a good little rework here. A couple little decisions with crowd control, maybe I'm not the biggest fan of, but I think we need to see how crowd control plays out overall, to really know if the removal of like repentance is going to be too damaging or not. But my breakdown with it is just good, man. I think it's good, man. So I hope this video is helpful in terms of showing you what's going on with Ret Paladin and intriguing your interest or possibly disinterest in playing the specialization, so you can make the right choice for yourself. Thank you guys very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.